Woo! All right, volume 2. We on to this shit. Now check this out. And like I say, I stand on what I say. If y'all look at these videos, go back 10 years. I've been predicting things that were going to happen in this community for a long time. Unfortunately, some of these things have happened. Nobody took heed. It was opportunities for us to change the destiny of this community, and it just didn't happen. And this is why we're in the position we're in now. By the way, I'm Terrell, Hall of Fame, D-Line, and TBKC. I fucked that all up. Y'all know who I am anyway. But check it out. How did the ABKC come about? I'm going to tell you, even with a lie, there's some truth. Now, this is what happened. They did not want us around. They did not want us around the UKC for good reason, as I explained in the last video. The UKC, you know, they do American Pit Bull Terriers. Many of you who know the American Pit Bull Terrier is literally half the size, a lot of times, of what we do with the American Bully. Our features are exaggerated as we wanted a more extreme, and I'm not talking about the extreme that y'all have now, but a more extreme version of the American Pit Bull Terrier. That's why we used to use the phrase, and I still use it, a pit bull on steroids. That was actually coined by Dave Wilson. That was our mission. It was always our mission. You could see it in the earlier dogs. You could see the look, you know, the more chiseled face, the cheeky type appearance. We had a different dog than they had. So what was starting to happen at this time, as I told y'all, there were a lot of shows, you know, Larry Durant on the West Coast. A lot of the other West Coast brothers would drop in and just drop a show, and they were getting huge numbers. Then you had Byron down in Houston, where his shows were just incredibly gigantic, you know. Some very, very nice places. I mean, he was bringing them out. You had, well, Larry was bringing out the celebrities too, where you just had plenty, Caesar Milan, different actors and actresses. What was it, West Coast Customs, Exhibit. You know, you had DJ Quick coming out for the Atomic Dog magazines and different things of that nature, which actually that was a little bit later. But you had, you know, pro athletes. It was a scene. It was a culture that was developing on its own, and this is why I pay homage to the culture, man, not the individual who's claiming that he created the culture. But you had people coming in from everywhere, you know. You had people, you know, like I told y'all, entertainers of different sorts, athletes of different sorts coming in, and these shows were gigantic, and you had different people just putting it down all over the country, you know, and it was growing. And then you started to have a little bit of international appeal about itself too. So during this time, and like I told y'all, to tell y'all how recent this was, I judged Paco's first show, which was actually at a Larry Durant event. And, you know, Paco, Nemesis, King Lion, Monster J, what was his name? What was Ed's boy's name? Y'all remember the fat one. But I'm getting old. I'm remembering shit. I'm forgetting shit. 21 Blackjack, I'm sorry. But, you know, all of these dogs, there was a lot of them that was in there. Paco was in there that day. And I was really liking the pocket, and I first seen Paco, and I said, this dude gonna be a star. But this was a Larry Durant show. The ABKC didn't even exist at this time. So this tell y'all, like, how big the culture had already gotten before we actually got to the ABKC. So at this time, what started to happen is that, you know, the Elite Edge, we would travel together. We would go to these events together. We would promote together. And the idea starts circulating that, hey, we can't do UKC. Let's start thinking about doing some our own registry shit. And when I say our own, now, I'm not, like, I give credit where credit is due. Dave was influential in this idea process, but there were a lot of people in the room. It was a lot of people's money. As I told y'all, Adrian and Alfredo literally had the registry out of their house in California. You know what I mean? You had different people who were writing the standard. The standard was based off of Marco Suarez, his boy Paco, and my female Hallie. You know, this thing was like, was coming together, you know what I mean? And you know, we were doing our thing. The show promotion was going on. You had me and Chris from Against All Odds as the Midwest managers. We was making a lot of things happen in the Midwest. And like I said, you had the Florida boys doing their thing. And it was strange enough that the only place that you weren't seeing shows at was in Virginia. And that's how we came to the Where It All Began show, you know, the most expensive, useless show to this date. Because it just, you know, Dave, to his credit, was fighting the city to try to make the show go down. And I really just believe the promotion failed. But, you know, it really locked everything in to where you had all kind of people traveling out there, you know, once again, celebrities and everything else. And that became the ABKC's crowning jewel as its first show. Let's get the registry going. Let's really, you know, first big show. Let's get the registry going. And, you know, and although I called it useless, it served its purpose. A lot of people made it out there. It was a great event. You had people coming from around the country. It just could have been a lot bigger. But, you know, that was the ABKC like kickoff. After that, what started to happen is we went back into the, you know, barbecues. This person has a show, that person has a show. And the ABKC really wasn't taking off. I'm gonna be honest with y'all. It was probably more so one reason that it wasn't taking off is because nobody had ever did a registry before. So with none of us having extensive knowledge of a registry at all, you just had a bunch of dudes who was just in the mix trying to make something happen, and it really was not happening. It wasn't happening at all, you know what I mean? So we look at it and we started to get in our thought process of how to get this shit going. And although we kept on doing shows, now the paperwork was an issue. And Adrian and Alfredo, man, they was busting their asses, but they just couldn't keep up because the promotion on the show end was so good, and the way that the breed was blowing up was so good that they couldn't keep up with it, man. It was like bags and bags of paperwork that never got done and other things like that, you know, and the system needed to be updated. And really it led to some issues. Now, during this time, of course, everything kept growing and kept growing. But also during this time, we started to see something change. Remember, as I told you, the early days, the two stars of the registry, I mean, of the breed, was probably Hallie and for sure Hallie and Paco. You had Hef, you know, they're close by. And this would, you know, these were the dogs that were desired. This was the look. More people were starting to come towards the pocket. Now, it was helping everything take off, but the paperwork still wasn't coming in. So I gotta tell this story in twofold so y'all can understand. You had your stars, you had your groups, you had people pushing shit. It was like a fun show because the paperwork was not coming in. You know, they just couldn't keep up with it, man. You had Bully Palooza and they was getting 2,500, 3,500 people. These spots was packed, still no paperwork. Then what I just referred to, the pocket dogs. We started to see a change in the pockets. One of the big reasons we started to see a change in the pocket was very simple. They were considered to be the big money dog. You know what I mean? Marco kept raising Paco stud feed. People kept wanting to buy it. Dave and Cruz raised Little Rose stud feed. Now nowadays, Little Rose would actually be a, what would he be? A standard, you know, 17 inches. But he was pocket back then because all other dogs was, you know, big as hell. Paco was creating the little smaller dogs like Gargoyle and Toshi that a lot of people love. So everybody started to go into this realm of loving the short, squattier dogs. This really helped the breed take off. Something else that was happening at that time was the emergence of Remy line. Between Paco line, Remy line, and everything else that was going on, it made the breed explode. Keep in mind, none of this had anything to do with Dave Wilson's ass. Remy line was growing faster than, Remy line was growing just as fast as the fucking ABKC was. You know, later on, Remy line became a threat to the ABKC, and Fabian just sort of dropped the ball on that. Paco line had took over, and it was everywhere in the world. You know what I mean? Even when I would fly into other countries, people would come up to me like, oh, you know Marco Suarez? And shit was funny as hell. Like, you really know him personally? He had blew up that much. But what was happening is this breed was growing. And I'm going to be honest, it wasn't growing because of the ABKC. It wasn't growing because of Dave Wilson. Dave was doing some interviews and different things like that. And he had Little Row. And he was doing some good things, but he was like a part of the machine. The big international growth was happening because of other breeders who were making their, making their mark and really pushing. And like I say, I attribute a lot of that to Marco Suarez and Fabian, because they went international. That made it even bigger. Inside the country, shit was getting even bigger. But you started to get a new regime coming in. And this regime would change American bully history forever. We're going to talk about that on the next video. I'll finish this part. As you see, as I document in part 2, we talk about Adrian and Alfredo, the twins, and what was going on with the ABKC, as there was no paperwork going out. You know, they could roughly keep track of show wins, and that's how they were figuring out who the champions were. But the paperwork has stopped. And it has stopped, and it just wasn't working. And the registry wasn't growing, to no fault of Dave, to no fault of Adrian and Alfredo. It was just, you're jumping in water and not knowing how to swim. And it was a big, big undertaking that really was slowing down big time. In the third video, which will be one of probably the most controversial and realistic videos, you'll get a perspective on how the ABKC took off and at the same time started dying. The breed started dying. I'll catch y'all on the next video. Much love to y'all. God bless. Peace.